I wasn't prepared. Hey, what's going on, guys? Back with another video. This is my cascading landfall deck. Um, Not sure why it says the price is different for unowned. Is there something I messed up? Alright. Anyway, so a long time ago, I made an Omnath, specifically Locus of the Royal, and I ran the deck for a little bit and kind of found that landfall decks in general kind of bore me. They're pretty good because they have good value and everything, and there's a lot going on. But just the idea of kind of playing this like pseudo solitaire type game where you're just dropping lands, drawing a bunch, dropping lands, drawing a bunch. Um, it worked out well. It's just usually you either got targeted and killed, or you kind of just did a bunch of things that at the end sometimes did nothing. I did switch it over to Locus of Rage for a little bit, but I found that just getting him out and keeping him on the battlefield was hard. This guy painted a big target on my head. So that's why I switched it over to Averna, the Chaos Bloom. It's green, blue, red. As you cascade, you may put a land card from among the exiled cards onto the battlefield tapped. You do this after the last card is exiled, but before you decide whether to cast the non-land card. So basically, any Cascade card is kind of like a landfall or a land card, as long as you hit it. So it's basically just a lands deck with crappy Cascade cards in it. I believe I'm missing one Minotaur guy that's like an artifact guy that cascades, but I'm pretty sure I have everything else in this deck. So I'll just kind of run through what it is. I'll try to give you like a brief explanation if the card's kind of weird or whatever, or just tell you what I like about it. So we're going to start off with Elvish Reclaimer. He's 1 green. He gets +2/+2 as long as there are 3 or more land cards in your graveyard, which is a decent effect for him to have, but it's kind of useless for the most part. But if you pay 2 and tap him, you could sack a land, search for a land card, put it on the battlefield tapped. This is good to just throw lands into your graveyard. There's a lot of recursion in most landfall decks, so and ability to play lands from graveyards. So I like to just kind of fill up the graveyard if I already know that I'm going to do something. Also, if I draw it late, it can help me get lands that are crucial, like Field of the Dead, to really help out. I have Lotus Cobra in here, colorless and a green. It has landfall, so whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you could add 1 mana of any color. So this is really good if you have different landfall triggers out, or you start cascading, you get free mana, start ramping in other cascadey things, and start doing some cool stuff there. Vexing Shusher, it's the newest card I just added to this. It's 2 hybrid red and greens. Goblin, Shaman, 2/2. It can't be countered, and if you pay a red-green hybrid, then target spell can't be countered. So just a nice little protection thing. Augur of Autumn, colorless, 2 green. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may play land cards from the top of your library, which is very nice to get those out onto the battlefield if you need them and you don't have a Averna out or anything, then you won't really care about the cascading into them. And if you have 3 or more creatures with different powers, then you can cast creature spells from the top of your library, which is pretty exciting. The ability to cast a really gross creature right off the top can really change the game. Azusa, Lost but Seeking, 2 colorless, 1 green. Holy shit, I didn't realize that cost that much. You may play 2 additional lands on each of your turns. So this is just pretty much the best creature in the deck. That ability to play 2 additional lands can change the entire game. Dryad of the Elysian Grove, it's 2 colorless, 1 green. Enchantment creature, Nymph, 2/4. It allows you to play an additional land on your turn, and it makes it so lands you control are each basic land color type. So basically, it gives you the ability that if you have a dual land, now it's actually 3 colors if you need it to be. Also, expensive card I didn't quite realize. As you guys will see in landfall decks, if you throw money at the wall, the deck get better. Specifically for landfall decks, it feels like. Roomnat Excavator, 2 colorless, 1 green. It is a Naga Cleric, 2/3. It allows you to play lands from your graveyard. Scoot Swarm, probably the most broken landfall card in existence. 2 colorless, 1 green insect, 1/1. It has landfall, so you create a 1/1 insect, but if you have 6 or more lands, you create a copy of Scoot Swarm. This can really lead to a lot of games where Scoot Swarm wins games. You'll have too many tokens to count or care about, and most of the time people just kind of roll their eyes, look at you, and they already know that they lost, because how are you supposed to stop that many Scoot Swarms from killing you other than just never allowing it to get to that place, I suppose. This is kind of the other bread and butter of the deck, is Shardless Agent, colorless green, blue, just Cascade. So when you Cascade, you exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a card with lesser converted mana cost, and then you get to cast that spell for free. So the big thing is you cast Shardless Agent, you Cascade through a bunch of your deck until you hit something like Lotus Cobra. There's already a land in between there, so the land gets to go down first, then Lotus Cobra hits, then Shardless Agent hits. That's kind of how this deck plays. It's very explosive to the point where sometimes on turn 6 or 7 I just kind of accidentally do too much kind of thing going on. Tireless Provisioners, 2 colorless, 1 green. It's an Elf Scout 3/2 with landfall, so when it enters you can create a food token or a treasure token. I almost always create the treasure tokens, but it is nice to have the ability, I guess, to gain a few life if you need it. Wayward Swordtooth, 2 colorless, 1 green. It has Ascend. It allows you to play an additional land on your turns, and it can't attack or block unless you have the City's Blessing. Basically just in there to allow you to play an additional land. Bloodbraid Elf, 2 colorless, 1 red, 1 green. Haste, Cascade. Druid of Purification. I don't see a lot of people run this card, surprisingly, but I think it's really good. It is 3 colorless, 1 green. Human Druid, 2/3. On ETB, starting with you, each player may choose an artifact or enchantment you don't control. Destroy each permanent chosen this way. So usually I love to play this if something is annoying me on the battlefield, and then I know that there's other people that are going to blow up other stuff if they want. Sometimes it'll dud if the people are all against you and they all choose the same thing, but it rarely does that because usually people want to slow down the rest of the board. So basically pick your target, allow them to pick whatever else they want. Also, it's a 4-drop, so it is possible to Cascade into it, which I think is pretty funny. Mina and Den, Wild Boar, 2 colorless, 1 red, 1 green, allows you to play an additional land. You can pay a red and a green, return a land to your hand, and give a creature trample until the end of turn. This is nice if you just need extra landfall triggers. The ability to kind of return it and then replay and return it and replay is pretty fine. The trample a little less so, but it could matter. There are certain creatures in this deck that care about that kind of stuff. Omnath, colorless, 1 green, 1 blue, 1 red. ETB, it deals damage to any target equal to the number of elementals you control. Naturally, there's some elementals in this deck, but that's kind of the more irrelevant part of it. The part that matters more is whenever a land enters battlefield under your control, you can put a +1/+1 counter on target elemental you control, which could buff the other ones or buff itself. And if you control 8 or more lands, you get a draw card. So this is nice when you have that 8 or more lands and you start drawing cards after cascading into landfall triggers the hit, and then you'll draw. It's pretty crazy. Rashmi, Eternity's Crafter, 2 colorless, 1 green, 1 blue. Elf Druid, remember you cast your first spell each turn. Reveal the top card of your library. If it's a non-land card but converted mana cost less than or equal to it, you get to cast it without paying its cost. If you don't cast the revealed card, you just put it in your hand. World Shaper, really underrated card for landfalls especially. So it's 3 colorless, 1 green. Merfolk Shaman 3/3. When it attacks, you may mill 3 cards, which you'll want to, because when it dies, you return all land cards from the graveyard to the battlefield tapped. This is a pretty disgusting piece for landfall decks. It's actually kind of nice too if you have Omnath ETB, because you could just shoot it also to return all those lands. Amadi, Celebrant of Bounty. This is originally my idea for the deck, but I realized that mixing the landfall in it gives it more of a reason. It's a Naga Druid with Cascade that allows spells with 6 or greater to also have Cascade. So at first I built kind of a huge, big, spelly type thing with this. But the thing was, I think that Amodi, if you were going to build it, is kind of cool if you have like extra turn spells, because then you could cascade into other things and stuff like that. But it's in here because it allows us to cascade, which is pretty funny because you get to play something like AC and then cascade off of AC. Also, if you play like Sakashima's Protege, which has Cascade. You'll get a Cascade twice, which is pretty cool. Tediova gives you... sorry. Thought I heard something upstairs. I guess not. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, gain a life, draw a card. AC, 4 colorless, 1 green, 1 blue. Allows you to play an additional land. Whenever a land ETBs, you may draw a card. Ancient Greed Warden, 4 colorless, 2 green, elemental, 5/7 reach. Allows you to play lands from graveyards and doubles landfall triggers, which is pretty crazy. Aurora Phoenix, 4 colorless, 2 red, flying, has Cascade. And whenever you cast a spell with Cascade, you could return it from the graveyard to your hand, which is pretty nice. Allows you to get some more recurring cascading if you need to. I've never had it happen yet, but it's pretty cool. Boarding Party, 5 colorless, 1 red, haste, Cascade. Multani, Yavimaya's Avatar, 4 colorless, 2 green. It is an elemental avatar, reach, trample, 0/0 that gets +1/+1 for each land you control and each land in your graveyard. You could pay 1 and a green to return 2 lands you control to your owner's hand to return Multani from the graveyard to your hand. He's a unit of a creature to be able to swing in with. And we have a couple of those that are just ouchies in the deck. Phylaf, 4 colorless, 1 red, 1 green, elemental, ETB, create a 0/1 plant for each basic land you control. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you can put 4 +1/+1 counters on target plant you control. This is one of the ones I've considered removing from the deck because it is for each basic land, and you'll see when we get down there, we don't run a lot of basic lands. We run, I believe, 6 because we run Field of the Dead in here. Rampaging Velots, 4 colorless, 4 colorless, 2 green, beast, trample, land ETBs, create a 4/4 beast. Sakashima's Protege, 4 colorless, 2 blue, flash, which is a really good piece in this deck to be able to do on instant speed before your turn and then become scarier and then win. It has Cascade, and you can have it enter the battlefield of any permanent that entered the battlefield this turn. So if someone plays something cool, you go ahead and flash this guy out. You Cascade first, so that card's going to hit first before you have to even reveal what this is going to enter as a copy of. So if you go ahead and say, oh, I just Cascaded into, I mean, I guess on the 5-drop spot, there's not like a ton, but I mean, even just the ability to play 2 additional lands, and then you have that enter as a copy of it. Now you have 4 additional lands. It's pretty crazy. Sweet Gum Recluse, 4 colorless, 2 green, flash, Cascade, reach, spider, 0/3. ETB, put 3 +1/+1 counters on each of any number of target creatures that ETB'd this turn. So this is a nice piece if you have a lot of stuff enter, or if you want to buff up different things. Also, if you have a good turn, you can kind of Cascade into multiple creatures, so being able to put 6 to 12 counters on stuff is pretty good. Anointed Altasaur, 5 colorless, 2 green, reach, trample, 6/5 with Cascade. Vendor Zendikar, ETBs, create 0/1 plant for each land you control. Landfall, put a +1/+1 counter on each plant. Really good card. Omnath Locus of Rage, like I've said, landfall, create a 5/5 elemental. When it or another elemental dies, you get to aim 3 damage to any target. This card can accidentally just win games, just especially because you'll have too many things, and it's like, okay, well, I can't board wipe because then we lose. But also, I can't really do anything about it because if I swing into him, I mean, he's got a wall of 5/5s. Rampaging Brontodon is my favorite card in the deck just because I think it's pretty cool. 5 colorless, 2 green, dinosaur with trample. It's a 7/7 that when it attacks, it gets +1/+1 for each land you control. So easily swinging this in could be like even if it's just 10 lands that you have out, which I know it's just 10, but that's not hard to do in a deck like this. That would make it a 17/17 with trample, which is probably enough to kill someone almost, depending on what turn it is. Maelstrom Colossus, 8 colorless. It's a golem, 7/7 with Cascade. And then obviously the most broken Cascade card there is, and my favorite card in the entire deck, hands down for sure, is Apex Devastator. 8 colorless, 2 green, Chimera Hydra 10/10 that has Cascade, 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 and Cascade. So, I mean, my favorite time to play this deck is when you have something like a Modi out, and then you go ahead and cast Apex Devastator, and then everybody has to watch you do 5 separate Cascades that all have landfall triggers. This right here can just obviously just win you the game on its own. I mean, you could just Cascade into a Cascade even. So it can get kind of out of hand. It basically, playing this almost seals everyone else's fate. And even if you kind of whiff on it really bad, you still get a 10-10 that gave you at least four free things, which is pretty disgusting. So we'll move on to sorceries. Nothing too crazy in here. Inevitable Betrayal is in here because if you Cascade into it, you're able to play it for free, so you don't have to suspend it. It allows you to search your opponent's library for a creature card put on the battlefield under your control, and then that player shuffles. It's good if you're playing against somebody with a landfall guy that you want to just get out, or if they just have a disgusting creature like a Crater Hoof, you could just be like, oh, okay, cool, I'll go get your Crater Hoof and put it on the battlefield under my control. Sylvan Scrying searches for a land card and puts it in your hand. 3 visits, search for a forest card, put it on the battlefield. Cultivate is 1 land on the battlefield, 1 land into your hand. Scape Shift is sacrifice any number of lands, search for that many number of lands, put them on the battlefield tapped. Splendid Reclamation returns all land cards from the graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Throes of Chaos is just a Cascade card with Retrace. That's it. Overwhelming Stampede, 3 colorless, 2 green. Till the end of turn, creatures you control gain trample and +X/+X, where X is the greatest power amongst creatures you control. Usually this is the game-winning card, but I have cascaded into it, and it's been kind of a funny time to see it hit when there really is no reason for it to. And Volcanic Torrent. It has Cascade, and it deals X damage to each creature and each planeswalker your opponents control, where X is the number of spells you've cast this turn. It's not hard for us to cast 3 to 4 spells and then do this. It's usually a pretty decent board wipe. Plus it has Cascade, so it's the main reason for it being in there. Crop Rotation, sack a land, search for a land, put it on the battlefield. Beast Within, destroy target permanent, they get a 3/3. Harrow and Roiling Regrowth both sack a land to search for 2 basics. Harrow is addition to the cost, so if it gets countered, that's kind of sad. Violent Outburst is 1 colorless, 1 red, 1 green. Creatures get +1/+0 until the end of turn, but the reason it's in there is because Cascade. Forceful Denial is a counter spell that cascades, and Nature's Reclamation is destroy target artifact or enchantment that cascades. So as you can see, like, obviously the spell's really bad, and so is Forceful Denial. It's really bad, but it has Cascade, so that's why it's in there. Artifacts, pretty simple, straightforward. Soul Ring, Lightning Greaves, Swiftfoot Boots, y'all know them, y'all love them. Horn of Greed, 3 colorless. Whenever any player plays a land, that player draws a card. So it's going to benefit us more than anyone else, but it is going to benefit our opponents. And then Meteoric Mace, 4 colorless, 2 red. Equipped creature gets +4/+0 and has Trample. It's equipped for 4, but it's in there because it has Cascade. Could matter, but it hasn't for me yet. And then enchantments, I have Garruk's Uprising, Rhythm of the Wild, Tamir Ascendancy, The Mending of Dominaria, and Zendikar's Royal. Gives Trample and Draw. Rhythm of the Wild makes things can't be countered and gives Riot, which you'll usually choose Haste. Tamir Ascendancy gives Haste and Draw. Mending of Dominaria, the first 2 are just going to mill some things, return creatures to your hand. The last one's going to put all land cards in the graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. From your graveyard, and then this gives you 2/2. So down to the lands, like I said, it's a lot of lands. My land base in this deck, as you can see, is pretty good compared to most of the decks you guys have probably seen if you've seen any of my other videos. So I'll just kind of hit on the ones that matter. Things like Arid Mesa is in there because it's a fetch. It obviously triggers, which is really nice. So basically you get a 2-for-1. Things like Breeding Pool, because you can shock it in if you need to, or lands that just naturally enter untapped. Those are like the big pieces to the deck. When it comes to weird, interesting, good, different cards, Alchemist Refuge, pay a green, pay a blue, tap it, and you can cast non-land cards this turn as though they have flash. If you have too much mana, then you don't have to play anything on your turn. You could just go ahead, pass, and then just do all the crazy shit on their turn. Lotus Field sacks 2 lands, but this land taps for 3 mana of any one color, which is nice. Field of the Dead. After your 7th lands, you start to create zombies if they have different names, which, as you can see, every single land in here is different in some way. Even just if it's a forest and a snow forest, they still trigger it. So that's why the deck is built the way it is. and then Yavimaya makes everything forests, in addition to its other types. So probably nothing too crazy. I'm sure that there's a couple cards in here you guys are probably like, what? 39 lands is something I've thought about slimming down a little bit. I'm considering reducing it down to maybe 37. But I just haven't gotten around to seeing if that really is an issue or not. This deck I do play quite a bit, but it can be kind of overwhelming sometimes or underwhelming at other times, which is the downside to a Cascade deck in general. Sometimes you could be going into lands and doing stuff, but you really don't have any landfall guys out. Sometimes your stuff gets countered, you get bullied a little bit, which makes sense because this deck is pretty gross and can definitely pop off. Inevitable Betrayal could be a really mean card, so if you do suspend this, it's going to get countered, almost for sure. But yeah, in general, it's just a fun Cascade landfall deck. So, alright, just wanted to show you guys the deck. Not sure why it says 3 days ago that it was updated, because I just added this card in there today. But, there it is. If you guys want to leave a comment, let me know what you think of it. If you play Averna, is there any like secret cards in it that you find to be a lot of fun? I think I'm only missing one Cascade card. Actually, now that I think about it, I took Rajmi out for Maelstrom Wander, so I need to update that. I don't know why I didn't update that, but I updated this. But anyway, sorry for dragging on at the end, guys. I'll talk to you in the next one. Peace.